Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And we're now at the closing session of the day, and glad that we have reached this far. I hope that you found it interesting and informative. And I know that our final speaker is going to be filled with interesting information, and that you will find it very worthwhile. Ken D'Entremont is the Associate Professor and Lecturer at the University of Utah Department of Engineering. And his career spans across the product safety spectrum, including Manager of Corporate Product Safety and Senior Staff Engineer, Advanced Safety Systems for Polaris Industries, Senior Mechanical Engineer, Exponent Failure Analysis Associates, and his involvement with analyzing and testing mechanical systems, including automobiles, motorcycles, and ATVs. He was also senior mechanical engineer for Triodyne, where he conducted analysis and testing of machines and accident scenarios. Ken is to me, he's a real celebrity in the engineering field. He has published a book, Engineering Ethics and Design for Product Safety, a textbook that touches aspects of product safety design and product safety management. So he speaks with additional impact when you look at some of the contributions that he has made in the product safety field. Ken is also secretary of the board of directors of the Society of Product Safety Professionals. He earned his Ph.D. and MS degrees in mechanical engineering at the University of Missouri, Columbia. We liked having him here in Missouri, and his BS in mechanical engineering from the University of Arizona. Ken, take it away.
Oh, well, thank you, Don. I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me here today. I hope everyone's having a great afternoon. I hope you can see my slide deck okay. But it really is an absolute privilege to speak with you today, especially in conjunction with SPSP's certification program. You know, it's a great program, and they're a great set of students and attendees today. So anyway, perhaps what I can say today can be of help to you in the future. And before I begin, I want to applaud each and every one of you for deciding to work in such a difficult field, because it really is a difficult field. It says a lot about each of you as human beings. So please remember that if you're ever discouraged. Here's my slide here, and Don has covered a lot of it. So right now I'm part of the Rocky Mountain Center for Occupational and Environmental Health, which is a odd program, but it's jointly located at the University of Utah and at Weber State University. It's unfortunate that occupational safety really has to end up funding product safety, but you know, in the future, I hope that all of us can help change that. But I'm grateful to them, although I do reside technically in the mechanical engineering department at the University of Utah. So anyway, Don talked a little bit about my work at Polaris, and I was involved on every product development team for all their products. And I did standards development with ANSI, ISO, and European EN, European norms. And I was also involved with doing product safety recalls. But right now, you know, I no longer have a dog in the consumer product fight, so I can talk freely. So I just want to help consumers from getting hurt from by products. So I'm in a unique situation to be able to say what I want and do what I want. So it's liberating, but I am having fun now. Before I get started, some of you might have read the New York Times article. I'm not sure if that was sent out as reading, but an article came out in 2019 about a problem that my former employer was having, and people were being burnt, and some died in fires involving their vehicles. And that was really one of the reasons I had to leave, there were some ethical decisions and some actions I didn't really want to be part of. And, I did pay a price, so I want to be upfront about that. I was unemployed, underemployed, and bankrupt when I left the company because I didn't have a job. But ultimately, I landed on my feet. I found a great place to land. So I paid a price, but so did the employer, because ultimately they had multiple recalls, and one summer in particular was really nasty for them. And they ended up having to pay a $27.25 million penalty for failure to notify. And of course, those things do linger on. I would suspect that their relationship with CPSC is still frosty. But unfortunately, some people may have been killed or injured by what I saw back in 2011, 2012. It was the right thing to do. I'd do it again, but I hope that none of you ever has to deal with that. Let me ask you, the attendees, something. Have you ever been deposed?
Never been
Chris?
deposed.
Oh,
Yes, I
James?
have done.
Yes,
Okay. Aaron, yes or no?
yes.
Yes, okay. So,
Yes, Corral.
okay. Yeah. So if you haven't been, plan on it sometime in your future. So 2 months ago, I was deposed about things that happened almost 20 years ago. So, and this was in one of the cases that's mentioned in the New York Times article. But what I raised that because, decisions you make are lasting a long time, especially with e-discovery. So, just be sure you have a good story to tell when you are deposed. I have a smiley face implied in that. You will be, but I believe you'll have something good to say. So this was 5 years after I left CPSC's thing. And it's important for this reason. Otto von Bismarck was a master politician, which is going to be or is a useful skill for anyone in product safety. Learn from others' mistakes, and the political part is important because few of us have real power within an organization. So we have to rely on collaboration and cooperation with people. So be shrewd, be genuine, but sometimes you have to rely on others, but keep your nose clean and do the right thing. And that'll be reiterated through this presentation. So quickly, I don't know if you've been exposed to the 5 pillars of knowledge yet.
Hey, Ken.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. This is Al. I was just going to say the other thing I would add to what you just said, it's absolutely correct, but make sure you document.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And on that note, there is nothing illegal, immoral, or unethical about making self-serving documents. So if 20 years later, you may not remember why you made a decision. So if you can make a little note to self, throw it in a file somewhere or put it in a Word document, you can say, hey, I considered this, I considered that, I considered the other. That's why I made this decision. Great catch, Al. I should have put that in. Excuse me, put that in. But okay, so moving on real quickly to the 5 pillars of knowledge. We'll be talking about that, then talking about engineering ethics, product safety, and then some conclusions and some references for those interested in doing a little bit more study. But let me expand on that. So I created this figure. I know there's an SPSP document somewhere, but I couldn't find it. But here are the 5 pillars of knowledge. 1 is corporate culture of product safety. 2 is consumer product safety assurance. 3, regulatory compliance. Incident management is 4, and then recalls and withdrawals of products are number 5. So they'll be discussed throughout this program, but in particular, I'll be looking at the first one, the corporate culture of product safety. So within that, the SPSP documents show that 3 elements of that are corporate product safety policy, having one, advising leadership in your company, and ethical conduct. So we'll look a little bit at those. So anyway, as a product safety professional, you'll be involved with developing and supporting possibly a product safety policy. I won't discuss this too much. And of course, having a policy is a good thing. So the second one is advising the leadership of your company. You need to provide accurate information so that leaders can assess what the proper thing is. And your job is to help whenever, wherever, however possible to know everything and then do the right thing, which fits into the third point, which is ethical conduct. So I encourage you to pursue, practice, and encourage ethical behavior throughout the organization, as well as personally. It's a little aside, but you should also represent consumers who could be at risk by a product that the company is making. So why is ethical conduct important? I'll ask that rhetorical question, but I'll discuss in a bit about how ethics couples with engineering and product safety and how they interact and complement one another. If you have questions, feel free to speak out. But let me talk about the first topic, which was engineering, or in this case, talking about engineering design. And I don't want that to be off-putting. That's a glamorous word. Some of us are doing design that really isn't engineering, but I'll use those terms interchangeably. But all of this begins with a need, really real or imagined, for a product to sell to consumers. Here's just one example of a generalized overall design process, no details really. There's an idea, there's concept selection, idea concept selection, which is how many wheels is it going to have, what does it have to do. 3 would be really where the guts of a lot of decisions are made, what materials you're going to use, what's dimensions of parts, how are you going to test it. 4 is manufacturing and shipping, 5 is use by customers, and 6 is disposal, although that's not a big product safety concern generally. It's a big environmental and life cycle concern, especially in Europe. But anyway, this is sort of just an overall from left to right, going from the general to the specific and going from the start to the end. If we dive a little deeper, this is a more advanced diagram. And although you still see 1, 2, and then 4 and 5, I left 6 off, you can see that number 3 is expanded. And what that is, it shows that we're doing our engineering design or synthesis, we're prototyping something, we're doing laboratory testing, field testing, and doing analysis. And there's an iterative loop going on where we design and redesign. So someone has an idea in phase 1. Phase 2, project managers start looking at market size, customer demands, nice to haves versus must have. 3 is really the crux of engineering design, where we test and make many design decisions that affect safety. And then 4, the design is done at manufacturing. You make the product, you release it to retailers and dealers, and then it's used by consumers in 5. I left off 6. And also there can be technology development needs, like we need to make this product, but we need to refine this way of doing something. And that can be injected into the engineering process, but it's very risky technically. And I know of an all-terrain vehicle engine that was being designed on the assumption that a type of transmission would be done. And that didn't work out, even though the engine was designed around that. So as a result, instead of the crankshaft going laterally, they now go longitudinally, and they had to kludge the transmission on the back just to fit that engine due to the failed transmission. So it's a cost, and its effects are still visible on today's vehicles. So just an aside on engineering. In order to get the most out of your design process, you really want to integrate product safety into it, whether it's simple design or the more elaborate engineering design, development, testing program, which was the prior slide. Make safety reviews part of product safety, be active, don't wait for problems to arise, try to identify them and fix them, and get product safety people onto the product design teams. That's really important. And one of the reasons is there are thousands of design decisions made during the design process. And many of them are insignificant, like knobs and buttons and colors, but some are safety critical. Some are not. And most bad decisions probably do not affect safety, but sometimes they do. But even a benign decision made by one of the engineers ended up causing a product safety recall for snowmobile skis. The color of the ski was changed from black to red because the marketing people said, hey, we can sell a lot of red skis. So what happened was that the change in color was approved, but what they didn't know was that the red colorant in the plastic was ultraviolet unstable. So when you parked your snowmobile in your backyard all summer with the sun beating down on it, it would begin to crack. And then when you went out riding the first, second, or third time, it would break. So it was a no-brainer decision. It really wasn't so, but this is just an example of why testing is so critical. Good design, but also good testing are really important. So
Hey,
there are
Ken,
yeah.
I had a question on that. As far as the design process, was there any human factors kind of assessment done during the design and development process of these products at all?
It was done implicitly because at the time it was a very lean company. I suspect that now there is more of that being done, but it was done implicitly because they would just go out and use the product a lot in the field and provide feedback. So there was sort of an after the fact or during design human factors analysis, but for the most part, they sort of stuck with what they knew. So they had sort of dialed it in. But you're right, with a different chassis or different type of use, that would be very important.
And Jim, if I can add, or perhaps provide some answer to your question there. In my experience, I found that most companies lack that that part of the testing process. They don't have the human factors expertise on site. They sometimes bring it in from the outside, but I would say that most of the companies, at least that I've interacted with, don't have that skill. And so it's not a part of the EDDP test process that Ken has mentioned.
Yeah, it's been my experience as well too. And to what Ken said, sometimes it comes in after the fact as well too.
Yeah.
So that's what I was curious about.
And it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but there you go. So anyway, there are lots and lots of decisions, and there are a lot of people making intelligent designs, like designers making something rounded, knowing that, hey, if I leave it like it is, it's going to be sharp. So there are lots of design decisions that affect safety being made on the fly, but some of them don't get handled. So we as product safety professionals have to look at them. So how do we get guidance for some of these decisions? Well, one place is standards. I call this design guidance. So places where you can sometimes get guidance on how to design. So sometimes there's standards, codes, regulations, or other agreements. And you can see lots of probably familiar logos there: ISO, ANSI, UL, CPSC, SAE, National Fire Protection Association. So there are some voluntary standards. They can be general or specific. Codes and regulations, some are for safety, some are for health. And we'll talk about the difference. And there are also best practices within your industry or maybe within a company. So sometimes standards are just test procedures without pass-fail criteria. And when you get to SAE standards, they're not standards, but recommended practices. So it does get cloudy. In addition, you might have an agreement with regulators saying, we met with the regulators and we agreed that we would do this. It's not written down anywhere, but we gave them our word. So we have to live by it. And there may be agreements within industries on what common practices would be. You have to be careful with antitrust stuff there. But sometimes there are those sources. And one of the greatest sources of information are the older employees, you know, the gray beards. I don't have a beard, but I have lots of gray hair. But they have a lot of knowledge, and it's important to get it from them before they retire. So, and of course, if you're developing an innovative product, there's not going to be a standard for it. So what do you do? It's hard to say. You can pick and choose from different standards, but it's unlikely that you'll have a standard for that product, maybe for a decade. So even though they're out there, they're usually minima. They're not, you know, saying this is sufficient. They just say this is necessary. So even though there's guidance out there, it doesn't really answer the question, like, you know, is this safe? So we'll also use technology and science, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I did want to mention a thought of mine. It runs contrary to some people, but I'll mention it nonetheless, and you can decide to take it seriously or not. But I always want students that I have in class to be informed consumers of standards, data, knowledge, anything. Through my years of standards development, I've seen that not all standards are good. Not all standards are necessary. They're not always written by competent people, although they're generally well-intentioned. And they're not always motivated by pure reasons. And these are rare, fortunately, but it may be that you come across a standard that isn't right for some reason. So I'd like everyone to critically think whether it's necessary to follow this standard, entertain going against it when that would improve product safety, you know. And just because something was safe last year, is it still good? And because a competitor does something, you know, should you do it too, or should you look at ways to improve? So this is, I guess what I'm asking you is, yeah, you look at the standards, but think beyond that and think to see if it's the right thing to do. Many of you will be involved in standards development, and you'll realize that just because the standard says something doesn't make it true or good. So, you know, innovative products are going to require a different level of engineering expertise and understanding of the state of the art. For example, hovercraft or hoverboards versus two-slice toasters. The two-slice toaster thing is generally well written already. So I could go in that further. I cover it in my book about needs and abilities of companies and products. If you're interested, I encourage you to look at it. But from here, I'll segue into ethics, but we will revisit product safety and engineering later in combination. So if I look at ethics, no injury was ever prevented because someone wished the product was safer. So your beliefs do not make you a better person, your behavior does. So therefore, in order to produce safe products, you do need to act. And that could be at a personal level or at an organizational level, you know. And we need to define what ethics are. I got this from the Free Dictionary, which has some pretty good definitions. So the rules are standards governing the conduct of members of a profession. And in this case, product safety professionals and engineers. And I'll sort of mix the two of them together, because although you're not doing technical engineering, you're probably, many of you who are not engineers are still doing design work that is at the non-technical level. So certainly I'm not going to comment on morality. That's, way above my pay grade. But I'll look at professional ethics primarily. But in my experience, I've seen professional ethics impact negatively personal ethics. So it's a slippery slope, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. So since we talked about engineering and this is an SPSP course, I'd like to look at two related codes of ethics, one for the engineer and one for the product safety professional. So, here we go. Okay, very few engineers really become professional engineers. I'm an exception because it can help testifying in court, looks good on your resume. So no compelling reason. I've never used my PE stamp or my punch to sign anything in my life, but it is important for civil engineers who work on infrastructure projects like bridges, dams, drinking water systems. But for most engineers, I'd say, certainly many, engineering is a job or a career, not a profession like medicine or law. And they rarely officially take on the NSPE ethics obligation, which is to, in the fulfillment of their professional duties, hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. Even though most people, most engineers, certainly most engineering students have never seen this, they by and large readily undertake the obligations because they understand they are responsible to deliver safe products, because their products, their work product, could hurt people if it's done wrong. So that's a good thing. So engineers pretty much are ready to do that. And one comment is that the welfare, Ralph Barnett says this, and I agree with him, that welfare must contain economic welfare as well, or else products would be so safe that they never work. So there is a balance between price, cost, and function. If you made something so safe, it would be unethical to sell it because it would be a high price product that does nothing. So that's what engineers follow. Let's look at the SPSP Code of Ethics. And I think you'll find it pretty similar, although a little longer. So SPSP recognizes the balance of things. So our job as product safety professionals is to reduce risk to acceptable levels. We're never going to eliminate it, but we can reduce it to something that we feel is acceptable. You have to hold a conviction that your product is safe. That goes without saying, but let's say it. And there also is an advocacy element to this. So speaking to higher ups if needed, advising leadership, speaking directly and being dedicated to ethical behavior. And this is all in accordance with SPSP's Pillar 1. So they're both good codes. They really don't compete with each other, but following either will lead to good products, safe products, I believe. But still, how do we ultimately make safe enough decisions for product safety? Let me talk a bit about priorities and values, and we'll see how they interact. This comes from my book. Product safety should never be a priority. Product safety should be a value. This is because priorities come and go and values remain. At least to me, that's how I see it. So all of you that have flown know that, what does the flight attendant say right before you take off? Other than fasten your seatbelts, maybe even before that. Sarah or
What
Sarah?
is, what do they say before you take off? Was that
Yeah.
your question?
Yeah, what do they tell you?
To read the manual in the front pocket in
Why?
front of you? Because it's full of extremely valuable information that almost never anyone ever looks at. Of course.
Yeah, that's true. But I think even more fundamentally, they say your safety is our number one priority.
Right.
I mean,
Mhm.
we heard that. I would rather have it be their number one value, than priority. But in all fairness to them, many flight crew members have been injured and killed helping passengers, during emergencies. So I think it really is a value to them. Maybe not the executives, but the flight crew. And my hat's off to them. They do a great job. So that's a little bit of a play on words. So personally, our values create our value systems, and therefore our ethics and behavior. And how might priorities and values affect companies? So let's ask that question. So values do affect an organization's path as well as its employees in numerous ways. There's a culture, but also actions can lead to job insecurity. But let's take this example. I call it the crisis cycle. So everything's fine, daily operations, you have a problem that comes up, a safety problem. So suddenly product safety becomes a priority. So ultimately you'll have a recall decision after product safety has become the number one priority. And there will have to be a recall decision. Yes, we recall it, or no, we don't. And there are perfectly legitimate reasons not to do a recall. I've had many recall meetings where we agreed that this is not a recall issue, but we put it on the table, everyone's aware of it. So that's still a good thing. But if you do a recall, they're going to be bruised egos, bruised balance sheets, bad PR. Eventually, the company will recuperate and catch its breath again. Then what happens? Well, there's another decision that will be made. It's not always made consciously, but do we learn from our mistakes? Does product safety, if it was a priority, maybe a lower priority, does it elevate up to become a value of the organization? Do we learn from this experience and change our way of business through better engineering, better processes? If you do, you have a new set of values and you can exit the crisis cycle. But if you go back and revert to old priorities, low cost, high profit, large market share, you're essentially depending on luck. It worked before, at least for a while. So if nothing is learned, business returns to as usual, and the crisis cycle may continue on and on. And that's to the detriment of all the people involved, including the consumers, of course, but also employees can be impacted, job security. If a company suddenly is going down the tubes or has a huge hit, they're going to reduce the force. So as a note, I want all businesses to make money. I'm not anti-business. It is absolutely necessary to be profitable for the stability of employees, suppliers, communities, and believe me, I'd much rather work for a profitable business than one that isn't. So, but this is a place where you as a product safety professional can help a company learn and grow and protect future customers. A company chooses its own ethics, and you can help them choose wisely by what you do, what you say, and how you act. Well, that's sort of what you do. Let me talk a little bit about ethical selection. It's a play on words with natural selection, obviously, but you should consciously select your ethics. Don't let them choose you. And similarly, they may change over time. I hope that they evolve rather than devolve. I'm sorry. So Aldo Leopold said, ethical behavior is doing the right thing when no one else is watching, even when doing the wrong thing is legal. It's a nice statement, something to consider. So when you join an organization, company, you'll be presented with a set of ethics that they have. It could be explicit through a corporate ethics policy, maybe even a separate product safety policy. Is it enforced? Ask yourself those questions. And even if it's not written down, there will be implicit policies defined by the goals and rewards for employees. And if you think that just writing a policy is going to be enough, employees aren't stupid. They detect insincerity. They know when you're lying and when you're not, because they'll see who's rewarded and who's not. So it is important for you to not only protect yourself, but help your company protect itself. So you'll need to select your own ethics, accept good ethics, help improve those at a company whose ethics might need work, but never compromise on your own ethics. And remember that decisions really do have long lives. Remember the deposition 20 years later that I talked about. And we talked about engineering, we're talking about ethics, but determining what is safe is difficult. And you cannot do that solely on technical things, which we'll discuss. Ultimately it will depend on your ethics to decide on what is safe. So what are some of the rules to do so? And this next slide is maybe a bit provocative, but these are my set of applied ethics. And it's an attempt to make the abstract a bit more concrete. I called them mine so no one else would be blamed for them. But the first one is work hard, and that's your responsibility to your employer. Be productive, be smart, do your best. The second one is do the right thing. That's your responsibility to society. Be able to look at yourself in the mirror, be able to sleep at night, be ethical, and encourage and enable others to think and act ethically. And that, again, is part of the first pillar. As part of your employer's obligation to you that isn't talked about much, make them executives earn their salary, make them put skin in the game when it comes to product safety decisions. If you want to make people scatter, some of you may know that, call a recall meeting. Everyone's busy. I got to change the air in my tires. This is a lose-lose situation. I'm better off not having my name anywhere associated with it. There's no upside to a recall. And I've heard of one general counsel of a large corporation who said that the recall decision is the most difficult decision a company makes. So, unless your company signed a form making you able to make multi-million-dollar decisions from the company, you need to bring the executives in, make them earn their money, because your decisions could cause fines and other things. So this is part of pillar one, to advise leadership. I doubt they told you, I don't want to know. If you do, then that's a different situation. But there are lots of ways of reaching out and interacting, building relationships, and delivering uncomfortable news sometimes to leaders. So that's a responsibility they have to you, because it shouldn't be your responsibility to be a sin eater for the company. And the last one is this: don't go to jail. It's a bit facetious, but in 10, 20 years, who knows if that'll be that facetious. Things are not going to get better regarding penalties and fines, especially when you start listening to some of the commissioners at CPSC. It's a political organization, and that's what you get sometimes. But that's your responsibility to yourself and your family. So to visualize these a little bit, I have a diagram here. And this shows, 4 arrows in particular, so directed arrows. The first rule was your responsibility to the company. The second was your responsibility to society, which is error number 2. Arrow 3 is the company's responsibility to you. And then arrow 4 is, again, your responsibility to yourself. There are other arrows that exist, company and policy, like taxation, infrastructure, but they usually don't affect product safety. So anyway, let's at this point go on to product safety from a engineering or product safety professional perspective. So what is product safety? Is it compliance? Is it quality? Is it reliability? Because something is legal, does that make it safe? And health and safety are often confused. Compliance, I think most of us know that that's a minimum. We reach it and then exceed it when we need to. So not a metric of safety. For quality, a low quality product can be very safe if it never works. You probably can't hurt yourself with a chainsaw that won't run. Reliability, in a perfect world, that would be true, but there's an example of an Airbus that crashed in Poland about 30 years ago. The braking system worked perfectly as designed, but not as intended. It was reliable but unsafe due to some programming errors. It worked as it was designed to, but some things stacked up, the perfect storm of conditions where a flaw in the logic rendered it unsafe. At the same time, legality really can't be used as a metric, because some places riding in the back of a pickup truck is illegal and some places it's not. I think there are still some places where it's legal for probably economic, agricultural reasons. So that's not a good metric. And health and safety are often grouped together by people that don't know the difference, and there is a difference. Health is something that hurts you over time, like secondhand smoke, and safety is related to things that hurt you immediately, like a circular saw. Let me give you an example. And in pre-COVID times, these were horrible, weren't they? The McDonald's plastic drinking straw, we were told how horrible they were. And I'm not passing judgment one way or another. But once COVID hit, before COVID hit, they're saying, hey, just use this as a reusable straw, right? But with this comes health problems too. You have to clean it and all that. But during COVID, they wanted you to dispose of everything. But for a while, these were pretty hot, and now you can get them in silicone and stuff, silicone. But Starbucks once had a recall on these people. Children were cutting their mouths on a sharp edge, and now some of them come with a rubber cap that goes on there, but that really doesn't address the health issue. Actually gives it more places for germs to hide. You can still purchase these at Walmart or coffee shops. But what do you think a safety problem is with these?
Very simple, they can break in your mouth.
They could break in your mouth? I guess they could, yeah. But one thing, and this is where Zoom falls flat. At this point, I just take a hammer and a block of wood, and I drive that into this, and it will penetrate about that far. I did this yesterday in my rehearsal, but when I was banging away, it made so much noise, and my mouse was jumping up and down and clicking on things. And I don't want to subject you to the audio that would result, but this is a giant nail. And there has been one fatality in England of a woman falling and having it go through her eye and killing her. So although this might be in some ways a health solution in global pollution, it has a downside with respect to safety. So just a counterexample. And I imagine Many of you can come up with counterexamples for compliance, quality, reliability, and other things as well. But we have to think about what safety is and what safety is, and then take a step back sometimes and just think of, what if, am I doing this because I've thought about it, or am I doing this just because that's what people are saying and maybe there are unintended consequences? So again, we have to look at what safety is and what safety isn't. Safety is distinct but related to quality, compliance, reliability, legality, but they don't have to have a one-to-one correspondence. So how do we determine safe enough, since nothing is completely safe? Well, it can be based on a lot of things. What is safe enough really is a fundamental question my students ask. It's a good question, yes, yet it's so hard to answer, and I'll do my best here as we progress. But we could base our decision on consensus, or democracy, we can all vote, and sometimes that might happen. But in my standards work, none of the standards organizations under which we were developing standards would ever define consensus. So we had to define consensus by consensus, I guess. So whose consensus would it be? Would it be the companies, the regulators, or consumers? And we'll talk about this on the next slide. Science and technology, we'll see that science and math can only take us so far. Ethics, that'll be paramount, it'll be very important. And do things change over time, including our ethics? Yes, they do. Let me first take a look at consumers who may be using a product. So imagine that we're making a new chainsaw. Our company's making a new chainsaw, and we have a focus group to evaluate its safety. Okay, we have two groups. We have an environmentalist group, and we have a firearms rights group. What do you think their findings are going to be on chainsaw safety? James or Chris or Sarah?
I'm going to say the environmental group will say the chainsaws are unsafe. Because,
okay.
Well, if it's a gas powered one, I'll say.
Yeah, I would imagine even electric, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a failure there, but I think the first thing that came to my mind is just like, it's a combustible engine that's running the chainsaw, and it's emitting exhaust.
Okay.
There's spark as well too, within the engine itself.
Yep. Okay. And Chris?
This is one of those things that there's a really great speech that happened a number of years ago where the guy asked about age grading for chainsaws. And I always try to use this as an example because in Finland, it's expected a 5-year-old will use a chainsaw to cut up wood to heat the family house.
Okay.
And so I can imagine the firearms rights group would be like, 5 years old? Great, fine. Personal rights and freedoms. He can choose what he wants to do. If he loses a finger or an arm, it's his choice.
Yeah.
Whereas the environmentalist group and that side of things would look at me like absolutely horrified. How do we make sure this is restrained and limited to a more appropriate age grade of 10, 12, 14 years old instead, among someone who can have a better handling of the machine, understanding of the risks.
Sure.
And then within that, what kind of safety features do we have? The difference between an electric chainsaw, which has an automatic stop brake in it, built in with the motor, versus a combustion motor, which doesn't have that. It relies on an external brake from the motor too. As part of that too.
Those are really good points of both of you. Thank you. But I would think, the environmental group is fundamentally at odds with chopping down trees, right, or cutting up wood, and would probably never own one for many reasons. And as you mentioned, James, they're unhealthy and unsafe, maybe. So yeah, that's what you'd expect. And from the firearms group, they see a need for the product. They're probably outdoors people, so camping, all that. And they may own several chainsaws. And oh, by the way, if you got hurt, you probably did something wrong, you idiot, right? So the value systems are really at extremes. So, and you have your own value system. So there's an old song, and I never really liked this song, but The Garden Party by Ricky Nelson. You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself. Even though that's trite, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I mean, you as a product safety professional have to be satisfied at the end of the day that you're happy with the safety of your products. So even though Group A says that and Group B says this, ultimately, you're not necessarily on your own, but you have to make your own decisions, and we'll talk about technology and how to do that to help you make that decision. So again, we have technology, but unlike other forms of engineering, product safety engineering has no laws. There's no Newton's laws, second law of motion, F equals ma, or Einstein's relativity law, E equals mc squared. You know, there's nothing like that that tells us, yes, this is safe. We can do, as engineers and professionals, many analyses, do calculations, and maybe even determine a factor of safety for maybe a sewn-in button on child's clothing. And I suspect there are standards on that, but just should you barely meet that standard, or should you exceed it by 2, by 5, or by 10 through a factor of safety? There's not an objective answer to that, and there's not an authority you can go to make everyone happy. So the designer, professional engineer really has to make those decisions. Even when standards exist, we said that they were minima, pretty much, not absolutes. So we still don't know how strong it needs to be. And Barnett and Glowiak, I'll paraphrase them, you cannot satisfy the safety requirements of society by feeling only the first principles, which are math and science. So ultimately, although you have technology, you're ultimately going to have to make a decision based on your ethics and values. So we do take technology as far as we can. There's risk management, and there will be people talking about that. It is a necessary part of what we do, and we should use it as far as it can take us. I think one of the things in risk management, risk assessment, risk evaluation, is that engineers especially want to jump to the numbers. So I want to start cranking out numbers. Let me get numbers and my calculator and my spreadsheet. I can do all this. But I think sometimes we don't look at product use as closely as we need to. We sort of jump over it. We assume we know what use, misuse, abuse are. But I encourage everyone to take a look at it. And it was a real problem for us in the recreational vehicle arena, because we know how we tell people to use it, but we also know how people truly use it. So where should that line be drawn? And sometimes that wasn't always looked at closely enough. But I urge you not to pass over an analysis of product use, not necessarily what you tell them to do, but what is likely to happen. So please do that. And then when we get to risk assessment, there are fault trees, won't go into those, event trees, bow tie analyses. I think those are pretty good for product safety. They can be done qualitatively, saying this is good, bad, or this is first, second, or third, but getting good numbers is very hard. So the FMEAs, failure modes and effects analyses, they're good reliability and quality tools, but I have not found them super useful for product safety applications. Your mileage may vary. And I found another system safety author that, or with whom I agree that it's not a great one, but don't necessarily write it off. But if you do all these things, then finally, you still get down to making a final decision on risk acceptability. And there aren't many customers who are knowledgeable enough to really assess and accept risk. The Department of Defense is an example of someone who there'll be an authority person that'll sign off saying, I've looked at this risk and this is good. But in the consumer realm, we really don't have that. And also what might be acceptable today may not be acceptable tomorrow. Anyway, I'm sorry. So there are a lot of options, it's hard to get good numbers, but again, at the end of the day, nothing will tell you, yes, this is good, or no, that's bad. Let's look at some products over the years. The figure on the right was a crib you could put out your apartment window so your kid could hang out there and get fresh air. I think this is from the 30s. And I think even back then, a lot of people thought, is this really a good idea? But I don't think anyone makes them anymore. But at least for some people, it was considered safe. And today we have the hoverboards, there's certainly the battery issue with lithium ion batteries, but there's a stability issue there. So things change, and what was safe last year, maybe there's a new technology that can make it even safer, or maybe I've thought about it a little bit more and now it's no longer safe. And one problem that the product safety field can have, especially during litigation, is you're expected to have the same opinion 30, 40 years later as you did when you might have given a deposition decades ago. But we all grow, we all learn, we reconsider things. Our values do shift a little bit. They're not generally drastic, but over time, over years, you can see that, I thought that was safe, but now that I think about it some more, maybe not. But and it can also go the other way. So just keep an open mind about these things, and continue thinking about them, thinking critically. One thing I just did want to throw in quickly is that frequently, and maybe regulators and consumer advocates are guilty of this, but sometimes company people can be, they want to look at the product in a vacuum, but there are at least 3 different aspects of the product use system. There's the product, the user and how it's used, and the environment. And that environment can be both physical or it can be socioeconomic. If there's uneven terrain, that's the physical environment. But if you have drunk people trying to get thrills, after midnight, that's a socioeconomic effect. So it's a lot easier to evaluate product risk without considering everything. But in order to do a really good job, and I think one that we can be proud of, is that we really need to consider these other things. And sometimes they're uncomfortable to think about, they're inconvenient, may cause us to do something we wouldn't do otherwise. But I think that's our responsibility as product safety professionals, consider the engineering, the ethics, and the considerations for product safety. So when you integrate the product, the use, and the environments, along with good design, ethical behavior, and product safety considerations, I think they'll come together in a good product. So I hope these topics were not too separate. It's a lot of material to cover, and I encourage anyone to reach out to me if you have questions. But I looked at how engineering, ethics, and product safety sort of combine, and how they are related to the first pillar of knowledge for SPSP. So your guest lecturers will cover a lot more, but please keep this in mind throughout your careers. I encourage each of you to consider everything and see where new product safety material can be improved or generated. Not all chapters of product safety have been written. Unfortunately, there's been very little written in the last 30 years. So there's great opportunity for everyone to contribute to the body of work on product safety, design, management, and more. So, and if I can write a book, so can anyone. So keep that in mind. So in conclusion, I encourage you to look at the data, the information, and after using technology, reach conclusions rather than opinions about risk. Again, always do the right thing. It's your responsibility to society, but it's also your responsibility to yourself. Avoid becoming the no police, saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Learn to bring solutions to product safety problems. Sort of common sense, but at the same time, if you don't have a solution, you should still bring it up. And sometimes I've been really amazed when I've had to bring up a problem. We'll get a group of people together and just talk through it. And someone has this idea, someone has that. And suddenly, where I thought there was no way out, brilliant solution. It's quick, easy, and cheap. So learn to be part of that team to be a solutions provider. Remain open-minded and use critical thought. Avoid succumbing to groupthink. And that can be a problem within a small group. It can have lots of reasons. There is a tendency to coalesce because we're on the same team, therefore we should think alike. Speak up. Inconvenient answers are sometimes the correct ones. Not always, but sometimes. But again, remember the first pillar, and that you need to really bring these things up to management, to leadership. Remain humble. Avoid backing yourself into positions that you're personally attached to. Just try to be open-minded so that if you have to change your opinion due to some new information, you can do that without losing face. And that'll really help you be open-minded and avoid pointing fingers. Nancy Levison, who's a system safety author, says that blame is the opposite of safety. So we're not out to blame people. We're out to make safer products, whatever that looks like. And remember, your job's a little different than everyone else's. The guy down the hall is in marketing or sales, and they're responsible for selling stuff. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is the safety of the public. So it is a higher calling. I don't want to be melodramatic about that. But there is an ethical height to it that's not there in some other business positions. And not everyone is up to being a product safety professional. Not everyone has the composition to do that. But I really believe all of you are, because you've come this far and you're taking this course. So that's a good thing. And so when is a product safe enough? Well, after you've made it intelligent decisions, looked at objective data, looked at product use during the design process, when you've done all this stuff and understand your product, and after you've done the design analysis and the testing, both in the field and in laboratories, after you've taken technology as far as it can go through risk analysis, you've studied those results, you've talked to people involved in design and testing, you've conducted sufficient risk analysis and assessment. And I won't tell you what that is, because some things might be overkill, some things might be necessary, and some methods really may not be applicable to what you're doing. If you're doing a process, some of the product risk analyses don't apply. But you've done all this stuff. And then you've taken a good, hard, ethical look at product, its use, and its use environments. If you've done all that, then it must be safe enough. What more could you possibly do? And no one can ask any more of you than doing that. Once you've done your absolute best, it's got to be safe enough. People may disagree with you, but if you can look at yourself in the mirror, sleep at night, and know you've done your absolute best, what more can be done? And it must by necessity be safe enough. So you guys don't hear this enough, but I'll say, be proud of what you do. You do your very best. No one can ask more of you than that. You continually work to make your organization better, whether it's processes or whatever. And always remember to keep your own sword sharp by improving at your profession. Continue to self-learn. You already know that, but I'll say it again. Network with ICFSO and SPSP members, work with industry competitors. I found that to be really good. Sometimes it's tricky, but really we all have the same goal of keeping consumers safe. And again, look into future and present SPSP programs. Don is anything but inactive. He has some great ideas for programs, both ones to develop and how to improve them. And certainly SPSP and others will be working to make things better. So now we do have a group, so that's really good. And also always remember the 5 pillars of SPSP. We talked about the first one, but you'll be seeing the other ones later on. And please let me know if I can ever be of help to you. Here are some references you may care to look at, some articles about ethics. And I talked about Ralph Barnett, and there's a site here that has a lot of his writings. You may have to look through it, but if you have questions, call me. And this is my book in case you are interested in looking at it. I also have a set of corrections on my website, designforproductsafety.com. So you can download that. And if you find any, please let me know. I used to be amazed there were so many mistakes in textbooks until I wrote one. Then I'm now surprised there are so few. But anyway, thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Let me know if there are questions.
Ken, thank you so much for the contributions that you make to the field of product safety, as well as to the product safety education programs.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And so any questions from anyone for Ken while we have him?
Yeah, I have a question for Ken. Going over a lot of this, I kept going back to the product safety U-curve. And basically what that is that at the really high end, customers don't complain and issue quality products because, the product is so expensive, so high end that they don't really complain about it because they think everything that's wrong is their fault. The example I always use is the Ferrari F430 engine. The engine they made was defective, would blow up on customers, but they had a really poor return rate because people were like, the Ferrari, I drive it, I stress the engine. On the flip side, you have a lot of your dollar store items, which when something breaks, customers don't complain because it's $1, it's $2. Throw it out, get a new one, it's essentially consumable. But you have that peak of customer complaints at the value point in the middle. How would you say that fits in with a lot of like your PUE Venn diagram user and part of the risk assessment? Because, ultimately, ideally in a perfect world, the same risk assessment ideation process goes with the cheap and the very expensive, but in reality, that's going to be.
Oh, that's a good question. I think some of that could be fleshed out in, focus groups and other things, voice of the customer aspects. But you raise a really good point, and that is that I've just spent how many 100,000 on the supercar, and if I say it's bad, I look stupid. And let's face it, the more you spend on a car, exotic cars, you don't expect it to work all the time. You expect it to be at the garage. But if you buy a Chevy or a Honda, every time you go out there at 40 below or 120 degrees, you expect that thing to fire up and you're intolerant of everything else. Yeah, a lot of this is customer expectation. Boy, I need to think about that though, but it's an excellent question, and that really probably fits in with understanding that might be a part of use, and I'm still learning on this stuff, and maybe I'll have it in my second edition of the book, but thank you for asking the question.
Hey, Ken, will you let me comment on this a little bit?
Please, Don.
So related to something that Chris said about, customer expectations, and this is something part of ethics. That's the other side of ethics, and that is customer ethics. And I think it's probably something that several of you have dealt with. I know, I'm almost certain that Aaron has dealt with this. When customers lie or exaggerate about the issues that they've experienced with the product. So a customer may call into your customer service center and they said, hey, your product just blew up, it caught fire, it burned me. Because they want a new product, they want some kind of compensation. And then when you started to dig down into it, you find out, well, it didn't really blow up, it didn't explode, it didn't really burn, it may have smoked, for example. There's no fire or open flame. It didn't really burn them, it just got hot. And a lot of times you dig down into these things and you find out the customers are exaggerated. What this does is it makes our jobs far more challenging, because we're trying to collect this information to determine if this is a preventable safety issue, or if it's a substantial product safety hazard, which is a definition the CPSC uses. And it's just, it becomes very, very difficult because customers are not always ethical. There is even cases of fraud where people will intentionally damage a product or cause a product to catch on fire so that they can get some sort of compensation. Again, it's a part of the whole ethics equation from the customer's standpoint that makes it challenging from a product safety professional standpoint.
Yep. And if I could follow up, you reminded me, I would go through our customer complaints and you'd be reading them, and some of them would say, customer wants us to buy back the machine. So sometimes people, hey, the thrill is gone. I have buyer's remorse for spending $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 on this. And suddenly now that I'm paying for it, it's not so much fun. One thing one comment, I'm not sure what to take away from it, was when Polaris first made their first sport all-terrain vehicle, we were apprehensive because we had made utility ATVs, and suddenly people are going to be jumping them, also racing them. And although we tell people, don't do stunts, we know that's going to happen. And we had 2 early failures of the rear wheel carrier. It's a spider-shaped thing that the wheel bolts onto, and 2 of them broke. And we were very sensitive, what kind of failures are we going to see that we hadn't seen with utility ones? So we really took those seriously. And one of them, the guy said, yeah, I want you to buy back my machine. So, okay, that was one. The second one was, hey, it broke, but it's great. I'm going to buy another one. So we ended up doing testing. We dropped these things from elevation, and ultimately we decided that it was okay as it was. And I don't know that we ever saw another one, but yeah, you do get these complaints, and you do have to balance, as Don May said, where's the customer coming from? And there can be deceit involved, and I'm not calling anyone any names, but it does happen. So I don't know. That's a great question, though. Yes, Brooke.
So this might be a little bit personal,
Okay.
but I was wondering, when you faced your ethical situation,
Yes.
could you kind of talk a little bit about, who you reached out to, who you relied on to kind of help you, guide you through this? And did you go straight to your general counsel? Did you call the ethics hotline? I mean, how did you handle it?
I had to handle it on my own. There was an ethics hotline, but I'd heard stories about people who've called the ethics hotline and nothing ever happened. And when I saw this problem, I knew it would be different than some of the other ones, because some of the other problems we've had recalls on were Band-Aid fixes. And I don't mean that in a bad way. If you have a paper cut, a Band-Aid's a perfect fit, a perfect fix. It works, it's cheap. But I knew this would be a big one. And as a result, there wasn't a lot of receptiveness. I did talk to some people that, we needed to do a recall on these things, but I really can't go into too much detail, but there wasn't really any support there. There was pro forma support, but it really turned out to be non-effectual. So, but I knew that this wasn't anything I wanted to be part of. So even without having a job, I knew I had to leave. But yeah, I hope that answered it. It can be tough. And, whistleblowing is an option,
But there also are consequences to that.
Yeah, and you also may have some signed agreement when you came on board. So talk to a lawyer about that. I did speak to a lawyer before I left, and she was able to provide some wording on my separation agreement that was helpful. And so, think about what you're doing. It's a bell you cannot unring. It may have repercussions, but at the same time, you want to be able to sleep at night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you again, Ken, for a really thoughtful and information-loaded presentation on a very delicate and important subject.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So, class, please hang on for about 10 minutes or so we can talk about two important parts of the program that you'll want to be thinking about now and that will impact the overall assessment process. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
I will sign off then.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, or you can bump me off. I'm a little lost on my screen here.
Yeah, it's at the bottom right, Ken.
Yeah, I let's see. For some reason, I'm not getting it. All right, thank you.
Okay,
Take care.
thanks.
I'm going to take off also, Don.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, Al. Thanks so much for your help today.
Thank you.
We
Bye-bye.
appreciate it. Yeah, bye. Okay, this has been quite a day. And I want to do one thing with you before we dig into the case study topic, which we're going to talk about briefly. And then the remote learner platform, which is going to be your home headquarters for all of the elements of this program, including where the videos from each webinar will be stored during your program, and where you'll also be delivering some information in connection with your case study. But before we do that, I'd like to go down the list and ask each of you what, in terms of today, if you were to say, the one thing that really stuck in my mind about today is, I'd like to have you finish that sentence in terms of your own experience. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's simply a very subjective thing. But it'd be interesting, I think, to hear the range of thoughts about what really stuck with you throughout the day. And so why don't we start, Erin, can we start with you? Are you okay with that?
Going first. It's so fun.
That's because your last name begins with a B.
Dang it. Shouldn't have married. I mean, sorry. So I think for me, always when I'm taking a class and hearing outside perspective, I always and continually feel lucky to work for Costco and that we have the code of ethics and the support that we do, and that a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily a sticking point or a problem. But it's also helpful to see that it could be, and that I need to continually drive us towards keeping those codes of ethics and our culture that we have around just product safety, but also at Costco in general. And then I think today was a reinforcement that I need to assert my authority more and really take and lean into the authority that's been given to me by my director and my VP. And yeah, I know what I'm talking about, and I need to make sure that everybody knows that I know. So
Good. Very
that's
good.
my takeaway.
Very, very good feedback. James, do you want to share?
Yeah. So, well, to just not sound too corny, but the way I would end this sentence is what Ken just noted. Product safety should be a value, not a priority. So, I mean, it's pretty short and succinct, I think. And we never thought of it that way because we always like to use that word priority, but it should be a value. And it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, that, you know, it should be incorporated into the culture of our companies and our organizations from the top down, you know. And then also to take away, I think it's really, I don't even realize it because I think given the nature of the work that we all do, we try to be humble, but at the same time, we don't espouse or talk, or I don't know, just brag enough about our own accomplishments and our knowledge and our expertise and what we and how valuable our contributions are to our company and our organization towards, you know, creating a trusted brand and products that people want to purchase, you know.
Great.
And you know, and help the company make a profit, you know. To say.
Excellent. Very good feedback. Don Mays.
I think there's lots of food for thought here. What I found particularly interesting was the whole discussion about not only is safety a value, it should be a value, not a priority, but also the fact that it's complicated, and it is far more complicated than I think that a lot of companies think it is. And so being able to wrestle some of the issues to the ground, like we heard from one of the speakers, to just having the right team involved, I think is extremely critical to being able to solve problems and to do the right thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Don. Chris?
I really have two big takeaways. The first one is, you know, putting a lot of programs, steps, and processes in place. Being generally the lone man in a company doing it, you kind of feel crazy at points. It's nice to know I'm only slightly insane for choosing this as my field and not the programs I'm putting in place. That's a really nice break to just have that reinforcement that it's just, okay, are there different ways to do it? Yes, but what I'm doing works and still covers the bases. And the second one is really through Steve's and Michael's presentations, I kept getting the theme of keep it short and simple. High points, have the details ready if you need it, but high end points can be more effective than going into a lot of the specific details that us as product safety people think makes a case better for us, when in reality it's just, here's the reason why, here's what I think we should do. And then if they ask questions, then
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Brooke, are you there? I think we may have lost her. And let's see, who else? Chris, Don, Aaron, James. Oh, Sarah France, is she on? Okay, so I'll have to circle back with them, Sarah and Brooke. Okay, thank you all for those comments. It really helps me think about it if I can see it through your eyes and see what you felt was important. So, two quick subjects. One is case study. As you know, this is for the certification candidates. You have to decide upon a case study and develop that case study that you decide upon and prepare that case study. This is over the next 60 days so that it is done and in our hands by August the 15th in order to be reviewed by a review panel, which will interview you about your case study at the closing workshop, assessment workshop. After this event is over, I'm going to send you the case study description, and you will have a choice between developing a case study that we provide the background material on, in case you don't want to do that, or if you do want to develop your own case study, the guidelines for that. So you'll have a choice of either developing your own case study topic or using the topic that we have put in there for your convenience and handling. So that's the case, and that you'll have that before the end of the day. The second thing that I want you to be looking for is the role that our distance learning platform, which is called Remote Learner, otherwise known as Moodle. This is a platform that we have used for many years now. It is a home-based technology platform where several things happen. One is we store all of the webinars of the program at this location. And you will be able to access them. Everybody will be able to access them, program monitors and as well as certification candidates. But you'll be able to access that throughout the program. If you want to look back and see a presentation that you missed because you were out of town or you had another conflict, you will have access to every webinar that is being given in the program through our remote learner. Secondly, with respect to certain assignments like the case study, we're going to ask you to develop a short description of the case study that you propose to handle of the two options and how you intend to approach it. And that document will be submitted to your particular page, your own page on the remote learner section. Secondly, when your case study is completed, you will deposit it at the same remote learner location. And Loudon is putting this together and will have instructions for you. The final scheduling on the remote learner will be done by the end of the day, Monday, and you'll be able to access it by Tuesday, I think, if not Wednesday, but it'll be available shortly. Advanced reading and all that sort of thing. But now is the time for you to begin thinking about these two subjects that I've just raised. Any questions that anybody has? Any comments?
I had a question as far as the name of the platform. It's called a Remote Learner. Just to clarify.
Remote Learner. Yeah.
And to access it, do we
you'll
create a
each get a
username?
login. You will each get a login.
Gotcha.
Identification, and I think Loudon set it up so you can create your own password.
Okay. And then
Okay,
on the
but we'll
case,
have you a password to get in.
Gotcha. And then on the case study,
Yeah.
Is there a certain format or a template that you want us to follow on?
That's what you're gonna receive by the end of the day today.
Gotcha.
Good question. Good question, Jim. Okay.
Don,
Yeah,
one
Chris.
question on the case studies. Is there any old case studies from one of the previous courses that would be available as an example? Something
We
just
don't have those available.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say, but we also want you to have the benefit of knowing that it's really your product. Everybody's case study is their case study. And we give you enough guidelines so that you will see what the expectations are, and they will be graded. There's 3 elements of grading that go into the final certification assessment. Number 1 is a multiple choice examination. And that will also be on the remote learner platform, the examination. And that's to test your specific knowledge on hard facts and multiple choice responses that are all contained within the presentation slides of instructors. So there's no mystery about it. You will be hearing, you won't know which slides you're going to hear it in, but you will be hearing the answer to all of the certification questions as part of your slide review. And that's why we want to make sure that you have access through the remote learner to go back and study these webinars before your workshop assessment. The second thing is there's an individual essay that goes along with the product safety examination. And it's essentially, it's a very open kind of topic. It asks you to describe, with respect to the 5 pillars of knowledge, describe your own expertise area within that 5 pillars. Generally, it can only be 1 pillar, but if you're one of those people that have 2 areas of expertise, then there could be 2. And then also elaborate on those areas that you're not as expert in and what level of knowledge you will need in order to be able to assess what to do with a matter that crosses your desk in which you're not an expert. So if there's a chemicals thing that comes across your desk and you're not an expert, you need to know where to send an issue like that for further consideration by your company or by an outside consultant who's a chemist, or you may have an expert in your own organization who can answer the question. But you will be asked to identify your knowledge level at these other 4 areas, not so that you're an expert, but so that you know how to handle questions that come up relating to that particular pillar. So that's the second area of grading. And then the third area of grading is in the case studies. You are graded on both the case study written document that you will file with us by August 15th. And you will get a grade on that. And then you will get a grade on your presentation before the review panel. And that presentation will be a highlight of your case study will be your presentation. But for the review panel, you may just want to summarize your case study, not go through what you've done in the write-up, but just to give them a kind of a reminder of this is what I covered in the case study. And these are areas that we ask you to identify where you use judgment as a factor in terms of how you handled a particular aspect of your case study. Because the case study's designed to probe 3 things. One is your analytical ability and how you do analysis. Second is your judgment and how you use the results of your analysis in terms of what you do with that. That's judgment. And then the third is communications ability. And of course, that's what the whole exercise is about in both the written form as well as the delivery form with the review panel. So those are the elements that will constitute your final score, and then the determination of passing the certification, or if there are areas of weakness in any of those areas, everyone has the opportunity to do a retake of those areas that they are weakest in with respect to scoring. And you'll have a second opportunity to address that. So it's not like the door closes, but there will be scoring and there will be an opportunity to do something in terms of corrective action.
Don, can I ask you to add some clarity around the case studies that are selected? I'm assuming that it's probably easiest for the participants to use a case study from their own company
Right,
because they have the details.
right.
But can you assure them that there is confidentiality around that, that
Yes,
information will
yes,
not go
yes,
anywhere
yes.
else? And this is
No,
something
no,
that they
that
can
is
reveal
a
with.
given. That's a great question, Don. And in our, in the program description for the certification program, that is a point that is raised, and that is the importance of confidentiality. We do not want people sharing confidential information from their company that is inappropriate to do. That's not what we're after. And if there is such information, we ask that you not use it. But there may be information that you can be used, but it will still be treated in a confidential manner. Now, that's number one. Number two, program monitors are not asked to do a case study. You can do that if you want to. It's your own, you know, it's your own volunteer. But the only thing that we ask of you and offer you is participation in all of the webinars, the contents of the program, and to participate in that, particularly for those who may be candidates for the certification program in the future. And by virtue of having gone through all of the webinars here, individuals will probably be better prepared for their own taking of the certification program. So if you feel like you want to do the exercise, please do it. Do not feel like you have to do it. There's no grading that's going to be involved for program monitors or that sort of thing. Okay?
John, how many questions are on the multiple choice test?
There'll probably be around 70.
Okay.
Around 70. And the passing mark would be 75%.
Okay.
And instructors participate in the development of those questions in their own topic so that they are fully aware of the importance of including the any kind of a question and answer that they're going to submit needs to be presented to every student. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You had something else?
Oh yeah, and then how many people, when we present our case study, are going to be on the panel? How many people will we be?
Three people. There'll be two product safety professionals and someone with an academic hat.
Just one quick question on the essay. How much will it approximately be in terms of?
I'm sorry?
How long will the essay be in terms of length?
How long will the essay be?
That is correct.
That's also answered in the document that you're going to get.
Great.
Yeah, it's essentially, I think, like 10 to 20 pages or something like that, but it's in there. It's spelled out. Okay. Well, thank you all for a very good day, and it was really it was a treat for me to see you all interacting with these instructors along the way, and the high quality attention that you paid and the questions you asked and the level of participation. I thought it was very, very strong, and I want to thank you for that. And we will see you on June 8th. I think we have Don Moffitt scheduled at 10 o'clock on the 8th. And then he's going to do risk assessment and product integrity. And then Meg Hughes from Bureau Veritas is going to talk about a case study in setting up a chemicals restriction program in your company.
Ooh,
so that's on. Okay, what?
I said, oh, chemicals, my favorite.
We knew you were waiting for that, Aaron.
Well, Aaron, if you want, there's an Intertech webinar on right before this on PFAS, PFOS, and PFOA, and what the changes are.
Oh yeah, that's in all of our worlds.
You can do back
That's
to
been my
back.
world for a while.
I have people for that.
Okay.
I might
Okay, well,
have to
great.
write my essay about that pillar.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for being part of the family here and this experience. And we look forward to continuing down the path with you.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate
Thank
it. Have a
you.
good one.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Don.
All right. Take care,
Bye,
folks.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.